Hi and welcome to this tutorial for Termweb 4. My name is Gustav Sjogren. Today we'll be looking at giving guest users access to term bases as well as giving the ability to make suggestions. For this we are using a sample term base which has a number of concept level fields and term level fields. As you can see here, this is an administrative user, which means I have full access permissions to everything, including the create concept feature, which is the one that we're going to give the guest users access to. I also have another tab, a window, for the guest user login. Now there's a number of different ways for users to access Termweb. In this case, we're going to be using the normal login, but some of our customers, of course, have access to SSO and other features that allows for guest users to log in different ways. What I wanted to demonstrate here is that these guest users currently do not have permission to access any term base in Termweb. So what we'll do is actually first set up the ability for the guest users to log in, access Termweb, as well as define which fields they have access to in their interface. After that, we'll also set up their permissions for creating a concept and also narrowing which fields they have access to in the concept. So first off, we're going to head over to our administration menu, and as an administrator I have access to all the values or fields in the administration menu. We'll go over and look at our permission schemes first, because this is what we'll be actually defining what term bases a guest user has access to. Currently we have two sections to the sample term base, a suggestion section, which will be handling suggestions from the guest user, as well as a main glossary where we have our stored terminology that we want to actually publish and make available for our users. To give guest users the ability to access a term base, we need to edit this permission scheme and add the guest user group to the view concept permissions. Now this will allow the guest users to see and access terms within the glossary section of the sample term base. Now, of course, your sections might have a different name. Just make sure that you give them view concept access to the term bases corresponding to the permission schemes here. If we jump back into our guest views here, we can log in now and see that we do actually have access to a term base now. If we go up into our dictionary, you see, we can also see that this is the glossary section, which we gave access to. But the difference being that we don't actually have any create concept, we don't have any editing buttons and anything else that we have access to normally as an administrative user. So what we can do now is look at what fields we want to give the guest users access to. To do so, you can go to dictionaries and views. Right now we have an all users view, which is just a general view set for our all named users in this client. If we click on this, we can see that these are the fields that we're currently letting normal named users have access to. We've removed their access to the concept ID, which is an identifier for the concept, as well as term ID, which are identifiers for the terms. You can see that we do allow them to view the definition, source, image, but not a lot of this metadata that might be purely administrative. So what we want to do is recreate a similar guest view. We can call this guest view. Domains is a good example of something that we might want to give to our guest users to be able to let them see and know the context of concepts and terms. Sections. Now do realize that these fields are going to be very custom specific to your term base. You might not have a lot of these other fields that are available here because these are custom fields for this term base. But the same principle applies, meaning that you can choose exactly which of these fields should be available for your guest users. When you've decided which fields, both on the concept level and term level, should be available for your guest users, you can click on Save and jump over to user management, and then we'll jump over to groups. Here you can see which groups are available currently. We have a couple of custom groups called normal groups here, called sample group and sample group 2. These are custom groups that I've created. The default groups that are always available in the client are called all users and guests. And what we want to do is jump into the guest group, which you do so by clicking on the name. Here we can edit a number of features related to the guest users, and in this case we're interested in narrowing which fields, or applying the guest view essentially that we just created. You can do so by clicking on Add Dictionary, mark the term base that you would like to apply the view to, click Select, and here you can see the views that are currently available. We've created that guest view, so you can apply it by clicking on it and then clicking Save. We jump over to our guest view here. Currently you can see which available fields they have. If you click on refresh here, you can see that a number of these fields disappeared. And this is again because we've changed the view or the ability for them to access some of these fields. And this will also be available, any fields that are hidden will also be hidden from when they're making a suggestion. So now we've given our guest users access to a term base. We've given them, applied a view, so they don't have access to all the metadata. What we want to do now is make sure that they also get permissions to make suggestions. And we've pre-filled a permission scheme here called Suggestions Permission Scheme. This is a custom permission scheme I've created and applied to the sample or suggestions section. If you click on Edit, you see here we actually do have a number of permissions set for the all users groups, meaning named users. What we want to do is set the same permissions for guest users. This will allow them to create a suggestion for this section. So first we want to give them view concept, create concept, edit concept level fields, and create term. This will allow them to create new terms, not edit existing terms. They will also be able to create a new concept, and they do need the edit concept level fields to be able to access the section field, which is a required field to be able to create a concept. But we can control what fields they have access to and how they input that through workflows in a moment. We click on Save here and switch over to our guest view. We can refresh the screen here, and then we can see now that we actually do have the Create Concept button available for us here. Again, there are not a lot of fields available, but you can see down here we do actually have a number of fields available in the term level. Now we want to control exactly which of these fields they're allowed to enter. And to do so, we can go over to Workflows. You can see here we already have a workflow available and applied. And workflows essentially are stating what fields are rendered during the Create Concept phase. What would you like to happen after the Create Concept phase? So currently we have this workflow called Create Concept, and the condition is actually set to user group equals guests. So we've already pre-filled this one here. You can do apply this kind of condition by going to the conditions, going to user group, and then clicking on the corresponding user group that you would like this workflow to be applied for. In this case, we've only applied 2 pre-functions to this, and you can apply your own pre-functions by clicking on the Add Function button and then choosing the corresponding function type here. In this case, we have 2. One that's called Set Field Value Section as Suggestions. So Set Field Value Field Suggestions. And this is essentially going to pre-fill a field with a suggested value, or in this case, enforce the section that this term is going to be saved to. Because we want to have all these terms or concepts or suggestions saved to the suggestion section, because we don't want to be publishing these suggestions to the larger glossary. In the second pre-function here, we have a render field section as hidden, which means that the section field will not be available after we've set the section to suggestions. And this is just to control how the section field is its availability. Of course, there are going to be fields that we want our suggestors to be able to fill in, like typically definition is a very typical field because you want to know the context of this suggestion. But there's some other fields that might not be interesting. If we go over here and click on this plus button, we might not be interested in seeing any images that this user wants to suggest as part of this. I mean, that might actually not need to know what source they have for this. Maybe that's something that the validators or the project managers need to fill in. So what we can do is hide additional fields by clicking on the add function, render field, and then choose the field that you would like to hide for this user group. Click on source, you can click on hidden and save, and done. So this means that this has now been applied to the workflow. If I were to refresh the screen and click on the add concept button, you can see now that this field is hidden, and this will apply to any concept level fields. If you do want to hide any term level fields, you will need to include the add term task as part of this workflow, meaning when you create this workflow, click on new workflow and select both create concept and add term. This means that you'll also be able to render term level fields hidden or set term level fields to a specific value before hiding them if you wish. If I deactivate this workflow, refresh my screen here, you can see that I do actually have this suggestions field available again. The source becomes available again. So this workflow essentially is for the condition that this is a user who's making the suggestion is a guest, setting some specific values for these fields, hiding them, rendering them during the create concept phase. And this means also that the suggested user can't create terms directly into the glossary, which is going to be published. So this is controlling essentially what they're able to do. Do note, if they were able to do this, the button to create the concept will disappear. They don't actually have permissions to create. But this hiding these fields, making them unnecessary for the user to see, is a part of controlling your terminology. So reactivating this. So now my guest user does have the ability to view all the terms in the term list and make suggestions to a suggestion section. This was the entire tutorial. If you have any questions, please post a comment or mail us at support@termweb.se. I hope you enjoyed the tutorial.